Hello and welcome to episode 2. This episode is featuring the one, the only, Simon Miller. So, to begin this, let's find out a little bit more about you, where you're from, how long you've been wrestling, all the good stuff like that.
Where am I from? Well, I'm from Luton in the United Kingdom. No one ever needs to go to Luton unless you're going to use the airport. So I will warn you. I will warn you of that now. It was once voted the worst place in England. So I'm very happy and proud to be from Luton. How long have I been wrestling? I started wrestling I started training in 2016, debuted in 2018. But then, of course, we got to 2020. There was a little bit of a gap thanks to the pandemic. And then we got to the end of 2021 and we've slowly been getting back into it. So I mean, we say 18. So we say 5 years. It's more like 3 years. But in terms of the actual process of being involved in it from a physical point of view, yeah, 2016. So that's a good old solid 7 years. And long may it continue. It's been a fun old ride.
Yeah, you've been taking the wrestling world by storm over in the UK and in other places. Just seeing you at Sov Pro with Ian Skinner. That was fun.
Yeah, that guy, eh? And his new friend who lamped me from behind. It's almost like we'll have to have a feud, isn't it?
Almost that way.
I'll have to figure it out.
So in terms of your journey with dysmorphia, what has your experience been and sort of when did it start? Did it start before wrestling or when you got into wrestling or whereabouts?
I think it probably started when I was 16 years old and found a gym for the first time. So I was quite badly bullied in school. So the gym was like the greatest thing ever to me because as soon as I found the gym, I started to build myself up. I found confidence. I found structure. I just found something that I really loved. And you could never, you could never account for something like that. But I do always say to everyone that sort of starts going to the gym, as soon as you try to, improve or better your body, you're likely going to fall into some sort of a rut where you don't look how you want to look and you're struggling to make progress here, you struggle to do this, and eventually your brain can go into places you don't want it to go. Now some people deal with it better than others, but I certainly didn't. It wasn't like I was 17, 18 all of a sudden I had massive body dysmorphia. But I do think when I got into sort of my maybe post university to in my early to mid 20s, I mean, it was just small things like, if I went to the gym and I wanted to wear a tank top or a vest or something, I just couldn't do it, right? I just couldn't do it. Not that like it's a massive thing, but that's one of the earliest memories I have of being like, man, I just don't feel comfortable showing off too much skin or whatever, whatever the right phrase would be. And that kind of just manifested itself over time to the point like, you went to play five-a-side football with your mates. You'd go into the toilet to get changed, where they just whip their tops off. I was like, no, I can't possibly. And at the time, I don't think I knew what that was. And then eventually, obviously, you catch up with yourself, and you're like, oh no, it's because I just do not like being. I don't like anyone looking at my physique. I just don't like it. I don't want to be judged. I don't want people to think that looks bad or this looks bad. Maybe I'm carrying too much body fat, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah. And, when I got into wrestling, especially, that's why I wrestled in a singlet for so long, because I was like, well, I'm just going to cover everything up because, the thought of having to, wrestling's quite intimidating anyway. But the thought of having to have all that on your shoulders and you're exposing your half naked body, I was like, no, I don't think this is something that I want to do. And look, when I decided that I was going to try and wear biker shorts instead of a singlet, I had those biker shorts for over a year before I actually did it. And also the match when I was going to wear them for the first time, I put them on. I went, no. And I took them off and I started putting my singlet back on when it was actually another wrestler to me to one side and was just like, Miller, no, this is wrestling, man. It's not a bodybuilding contest. Like you are overthinking it. Just, and I remember I did that match. It was back when Defiant was still around and you can find it. It's a 6-man tag. I won't go through the people in it because, one of them was the people that took me aside and I don't want to, he may not want me to put that out there. I don't see why he would care, but just in case. And you can see me, like, as soon as I take my T-shirt off, I'm like shielding myself, like, no, don't look at me. So, yeah, it's kind of all segued together over the years. And it probably, I mean, I don't even know. I'm sure if I never started going to the gym, there would still be elements of this. But I do think going to the gym sped it up. And that's on me too. Like, that's probably putting way too much worth in what somebody's physique looked like. Because it's important to be healthy and, you know, and happy. But it doesn't, you got abs, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. As long as you're healthy and happy and you're living a good lifestyle and you're not being self-destructive, then it doesn't really matter what you look like at all. But yeah. That's a very long answer to a short question.
That's all good. So you sort of touched on it slightly, but how deep did the feelings go with the whole dysmorphia side of things, with you trying to shield up and not wanting to show your body?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing that would always get me the most is, you know, a close friend or a partner, etc. You know, would not a backhanded compliment, but just a compliment like, oh, you know, you're looking muscular or you're looking ripped, whatever the appropriate word would be. And that would, I don't want to say it would annoy me because that's too wrong, that's too strong, but it would bother me. I'd be like, well, I really didn't like it because I felt like they were what's the word, humoring me. I thought it was just, you know, I could not take them at their word. And that's not because I don't enjoy a compliment or I don't like a compliment, although accepting compliments is hard. But it was like times 10 when anybody, if someone ever said to me, if for some reason I wasn't in an environment, and well, actually, but it still happens today to a lesser extent. But if someone says, oh, Millie, you're looking big and jacked, I'm like, no, I want to talk about, I just don't, I cannot process those. Even today, I cannot process those thoughts because, you know, it'd be the equivalent of someone trying to tell you, oh, by the way, 2 + 2 now equals 10. You're like, well, I can't. What do you want me to do with that information? That's nonsense. You know, that's gibberish to my head. So that's always when I notice it sort of coming up the most. And, you know, it's kind of funny. Like, it was probably 2018, 19, whenever it was when I first wore the biker shorts, and eventually I got into a routine, and that's massively important. I remember going out for one match and being like, man, I should not be wearing this today. Like, you know, maybe actually it's all irrelevant, but I remember thinking to myself, you don't look great. And I remember someone saying to me afterwards, oh, Miller, you looked awesome out there. That's all I thought about the entire way home. I was like, well, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? So yeah, like I always, and that's still there. That's definitely still there today. If somebody ever says anything like that, my instant reaction is always to say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just being nice, etc., etc. So yeah, for one reason or another, it's there. You know, it exists. It exists within me. And the good thing is that, you know, I was able to become aware of it and start talking about it, which is always the most important thing. Because once you get a problem out there, it's not much of a problem anymore. Because, you know, it just becomes something that, and this is why what you're doing is awesome. If we can all talk about it, then hopefully in time, not anytime soon, because these things take ages, you know, we can all get to a better place with it. And it can just be like, oh, I've got a cold. Oh, I'm having a bad body dysmorphia day. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That should be the kind of world that we live in. That would be the best.
So you've again sort of touched base on this a little bit, but how has wrestling affected the way that you feel? Has it ever impacted it positively, or is it always sort of a constant thought in your mind?
Oh, it's always a constant thought in my mind. Absolutely. Like even like today when I do far better with it, you know, I always need to find a mirror before I go out and just look at myself. Like, is this really a good idea? But there has been positives too, because as we talked about before we started recording, I don't like to say that I struggle with body dysmorphia anymore. I still have it, and I guess you could argue that struggle is the right word. But my thing has always been, I know that some people are crippled by it. So I think it's important that, I know I'm going to sound like an idiot, but hey ho, I think that word has to retain its power, right? I think it's a powerful word, and we don't want to take away from that. So while I still have it, and while I still have my good days and my bad days, you know, wrestling and little things like, a good friend of mine gave me this advice, going to the gym in a vest, in a tank top, and realizing, look, you're okay. Nothing bad happened. You survived. You know, all of those things have built up a confidence. Confidence is probably not the right word. More confidence, we'll say, because I'm never truly confident with it. But also, I think it's having conversations like this and the videos I do on my own channel where I just decided to start talking about it. You know, 95% of the reactions are always like, oh, no, we get it. And then you get the 5% of the crazies. You're always going to get the crazies. There's nothing you can do about them. But I think once you start getting that positive feedback too, where you're like, oh, it's okay to talk about this, then all of a sudden it comes full circle. So wrestling absolutely has been a positive. I'll tell you this, right? How is this remained in my mind? Before my first match, I remember a YouTube comment, because I was doing the What Culture stuff, saying, guys, the best thing, I think it's the best thing, but the most fascinating thing about Simon Miller Wrestling is we're finally going to see what what his physique looks like. Oh my gosh. I was like, no, 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 no. This is the last thing that I want. However, that was in 2018, and here we are in 2023. Again, I had a match on Saturday. No point pretending otherwise. Like, my diet hasn't been great and my training hasn't been great due to personal life and stuff. And I remember putting on my biker shorts and just being like, oh man, I want to. But I still did it. And that's the key. I still did it. And I don't think that would have been the case without wrestling. Wrestling kind of put me in a position where it was almost do or die in many ways. And I don't think that's for everyone. I don't think you should, some people just, you need to have a bit more of an easy path. However, for me, as I've learned through lots of things in my life, no, I need to be pushed. It's like, get in there, and then that actually helps me. So yeah, I owe wrestling a lot in that sense. And fans, like I say, there's always the idiots, but most people have been so gracious about it that it's helped. And over time, it makes you go, oh, it's okay. There's nothing bad here. And ultimately, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks what you look like or what you think you look like, because it's just a body. It doesn't matter. This is what's important, and that right there, they're the two most important things.
So feel free to. You don't have to answer this one. But did you ever go to like a professional for help, or have you kind of dealt with it yourself? Did you get an official diagnosis? How did that all?
Well, I'm having to say, I have been to counselling before where it came up, but that's not the reason why I went. It was like a byproduct, which makes sense, right? Because all these things are interconnected. But no, mostly it was, I just used to read. I used to read a lot. I used to read medical journals on it. I used to read anecdotal articles on it, even on Reddit. I mean, like, genuinely, just go on Reddit. Now, with Reddit, you have to, tread carefully because some people are not nice. But yeah, I would absolutely spend a lot of time. I think important time too, just trying to learn about it more, because I think education is super important. And I think when you actually start realizing where it could come from, and again, for me, bullied when I was in school and stuff, probably had somewhat of inferiority complex is too much, but maybe, a fear of people that maybe wanted to, beat me up, take advantage of me. You probably get to a stage where you're like, the more intimidating I look, maybe that will never happen again. And then ultimately, it doesn't matter how big or how ripped you got. That's something deeper. So no. So I have talked about it in a professional setting, like I say, as a byproduct. But the majority of my time, especially after I started wrestling, was just okay. What would I do if I was trying to figure out how to edit a video? I would just go and I'd read. So I'm just going to go and read, and that was really, really important to me. And it's not a book about body dysmorphia specifically. There's an amazing book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, I believe, which is all about just living in the moment and not allowing your brain to, this is what matters this second here. And that was a huge eye opener for me. So I read a lot of that kind of stuff too, like self-help material. Again, not for everyone because it is just words on a page, but I kind of brought all these things together and found that it was helping. And when something's helping, man, just fire on through.
So you've mentioned that it sometimes is still a struggle and sometimes it's not a struggle. So on the days where it's not a struggle, where you're having like a good few days, how do you manage to kind of go on with your day? Is it just an easy process day, or is it like slightly more challenging?
I kind of got to the point now where I like to try and keep neutral with it as best as I can, because I think it helps on the other end too. So if I am having a few good days, then I become self-aware of it. And again, self-awareness is really important because you want to enjoy the good things. I always make sure, again, I try and stay in that middle lane with everything, because if you stay with the middle lane on the good days, then on the bad days you teach yourself to stay in the middle lane too. And I don't think you should approach your entire life like that. I think if you get some good news, or you win the lottery, I don't know, you should celebrate it and you should enjoy it. But for me, at least personally, when it comes to more sort of physiological things, or psychological things, I'm always a bit more like, just find neutral. Neutral is cool, right? Because you know that maybe next Friday you won't feel this way, so just enjoy it for what it is for now. Don't get too excited, don't get too down about it, and just take it day by day. And that's really my thing. Taking it day by day with this stuff is is really, it's just really, really, really important to me. Because then I also, what happens as well is I think it reminds myself, as the point that I'll always come back to, is that it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if somebody thinks I'm a big jacked up muscular guy or not. Like, it's irrelevant. Who cares? Like, who cares? And that doesn't define you, and that doesn't define your confidence, and that doesn't define your successes or your failures. So yeah, that's what I try to do. But at the same time, it's always nice to take advantage of those moments where you do feel good too. And because again, I think balance is key to everything that we do in life. So yeah, that's that. I just try and accept it for what it is, so that on the other end I can accept it for what it is too. And then it's not a thing. It's just a part of me, which is cool, right? Because human beings are complex species and complex characters, and we should have flaws. And we should, well, not even I consider this a flaw, but we should have these things that we have to work through, because I think on the other side, hopefully, we'll be more well-rounded people, which is kind of important too.
When you do have these bad periods, bad days, however long they might last, how do you sort of escape? How do you sort of bring yourself back to quote unquote reality?
That's a very, very good question. Again, I try and stay in the moment and understand that it will pass. And I also I try to be, so I keep journals of everything. So I keep a journal of what I'm lifting in the gym. I keep a journal of the cardio I do, the food I eat, supplements that I may have taken, whatever it is, because I'm quite a visual person. So if I see it all written down, for example, so usually I'm very strict with my diet and stuff, because I like to be. I like lifting weights and stuff. But on the weekend, I'll be a bit more lax with it. So if I wake up on a Monday and I look at myself like, oh man, I'm like, well, yeah, but you just eaten a bunch of sugar and salt for 2 days. So, there's no way. There has to, every consequence, every action has a reaction, etc. So I always try to make sure that I'm mindful of that. But if it is just something where, yeah, I just wake up and I'm not feeling good, to be honest, what I try and do is do something that makes me feel good, like genuinely. So maybe I will go to the gym because I love going to the gym, or maybe I'll play my guitar for a while, or I'll play some video games, or I'll go see a movie or read a Batman comic. Because when I find what happens is when you do those things that you truly do like, you get your brain back into a positive peace of mind. And then sometimes, not all the time, again, this is where I've got to, you then catch yourself in the mirror again, and wow, you don't look as bad. And you want to know why you don't look as bad? Because your brain is in a positive place. And that's what life is all about. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't, in the past I would really struggle with it, and I'd overthink it and be like, well, whatever I would do. And just because I have spent a lot of time working through it, now there's things that I've learned that I know that can help me, but also acceptance is the big one. I've just accepted it. All right, let's say you don't look good today. Let's say you look terrible. Well, nothing's changing. The next second's coming, the next minute's coming, the next hour is coming. So, but that took a long time as well. Again, I don't want anyone listening to this thinking it's easy like a light switch. It's not. And my heart goes out to anyone that, really does feel crippled by this stuff, because I get it. Like, I really, really do. It can be really, really horrible, and it can totally derail you. And I don't want people to be derailed. I want people to be as happy as they possibly can be.
So we're heading towards the final parts of it, but what message or pieces of advice could you give to someone who is struggling with similar sorts of feelings? Maybe a wrestler that's watching this, maybe fans, anybody who might be in the similar sort of situation as you.
Well, for starters, I think remember that you're not alone. And I genuinely think 100% of people on this planet deal with it. We just deal with it on different levels. Like, some people probably listening to me now going, oh, that doesn't sound that bad. Whereas somebody else may be like, that sounds like the worst thing ever, depending on what their experiences with it is. So always remember that you're not alone. We're all going through this kind of stuff. Nobody has perfect mental health, if only we did. And that ultimately you should talking about it is the best thing I ever did. I think that's how I became so just acceptive of it, is because I put myself out there, which is scary. Of course it's scary, but aside from a few idiots, most of the feedback I got was lovely. So again, if you do decide to reach out to someone and they kind of fob you off, that's on them. That's not on you. You ignore that person and you find somebody else. Even if it keeps happening over and over again, you're just on a bad run. Trust me, I promise you there'll be people out there that will listen. The fact we're doing this podcast right now, I think, is a wonderful indictment of that that, you know, we are getting to a place where we can be open and we can talk. And I genuinely think the more we do that, the more it just becomes, yeah, like I say, oh man, I woke up and I banged my head. How's your head? It hurts. Oh, I woke up and I looked at myself and I really, really didn't like it. Oh yeah, totally get it, man. You know, it doesn't even have to be more than that. We don't have to sit down and do a 1 hour character study of what's happening. It can literally just be someone going, oh yeah, happened to me the other day. What is going on? And then all of a sudden it just becomes normal. So yeah, normalizing it, I think, is important. So talk to those people that you trust, talk to those people that you know will have your back. And I promise you, like this one, I'm wavering of. It will do wonders for you. Which again doesn't mean that it's easy. You take your time and you find your own way. But yeah, getting that positive reinforcement, not even positive reinforcement, just getting the reinforcement that it's not a bad thing. After a while, you go, it can't be that bad a thing. That's just, everyone has to deal with something. And if ours is body dysmorphia or whatever yours may be, you'll get better with it. And, you know, you'll find a way to utilize it, sometimes for the best. That's what I did with wrestling. You know, it's now almost become a force for good in many ways. The fact that we get to talk about this and I do stuff on my YouTube channel, like I say. So, and knowing that anyone would have listened to what I've said and gone, oh, I feel a bit better too. Excellent. That's the dream. That's the cool stuff right there.